From Yarm to Yibby, Harrington to Horsley Hill, Swalwell to Silverlink. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.
Good morning and welcome to the North East Footy Breakfast this morning. How are we doing out there? We've got Steve, who's up in Newcastle this morning. Morning, Steve.
Good morning, good morning. The weekend is here. Football is back.
Woohoo!
Looking forward to the banter for the next 2 hours.
Yep. And we've got Macca in County Durham. Morning, Macca.
Good morning. Yeah, echo what Steve says. How are the lads?
And from down under, we've got Rye joining us this morning. How are we doing, Rye?
Yeah, g'day lads, throw another shrimp on the barbie. Friday morning, it's Friday then.
And the good thing is we've got some football to talk about this weekend. We've got lots of football going on, lots of things happening in the world as well, world of football that we can have a chat about. But we made it to Friday. I think that's the important thing. We've made it to Friday.
I thought Rye was going to say on his intro there, I'm looking forward to another 3 points from the Borough, but no, because you haven't got like this.
I'm actually concerned that you guys want to talk about football. I've prepared a gardening show, so I've got good flowers in season, and there's heaps to talk about the garden section. So might have to look at my notes a little bit.
Not again. More gardening than football at the Borough at the minute whenever you're on.
Oh, mate. I mean, if we can grow 3 points, then we might as well do that at the moment.
You managed to have a day off yesterday when Macca was just waxing lyrical about Sunderland for half an hour at the start of the show.
Yeah, 3 points for the Red and White Wizards.
I put a tweet out actually just saying I'm starting to get a little bit jealous of old Mulga up the road, and all the Borough fans chipped in and chimed in and said, that's how fond their memories were when Mulga was in charge of the Borough, but they just still feel like the club didn't look after him when he was in charge of the Borough, and that he wasn't given the pay packet to be able to go and get the players he wanted, and we didn't look after him. So
he was badly done to, I think.
Yeah, no, I reckon
well, he's in God's country now. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It didn't take long.
Now, he's got Sunderland flying, doesn't he? He's got, up to fourth. They had a very good win against Blackburn. I wasn't predicting a 3-1, but it's good to see you got goals coming from everywhere. But I think it's just still interesting with Sunderland because, the day of, if not, transfer deadline day, we were sitting here, and I'm not sure, Macca, you were on the show, but we were just sitting here and we were talking about how worried we were. I mean, we had Patrick Roberts wanting to leave, Danny Bath wanting to leave. We had Ross Stewart wanting to leave. We had Jack Clark, who's obviously in a turn of form, being upset because he'd been turned down an option to leave. And you didn't have any strikers. And then all of a sudden, you've just, been able to turn that around. But it'll be interesting now. What I'm thinking is come January, where those players are at now. With when you got a team on the bounce and you got, Sunderland flying up in fourth, I don't see, your Jack Clarks and, your Patrick Roberts and that wanting to leave still. So it'll be interesting to see if those players do want to leave. And I mean, we look at over at Danny Bath, who went to Norwich, who's only, same old points, but he's not getting a game. Old Benny Gibson, Steve Gibson's nephew, is still holding a place out from him. So it's interesting to see what's, from deadline day to now, how crazy football is. Also, what did Shearer say? What did he call it? Shearer, who likes to get on the beers, I've heard. What did he say? Football is bonkers or something, didn't he? Old Shearer. Yeah.
Give us your views on this, right? Because we discussed this yesterday. Dave obviously was on the show yesterday, giving it from the Borough perspective on your behalf. But Alan Shearer comes out, and I don't think he was being derogatory to Michael Carrick. I just think he was saying that football, in a roundabout way, like Jimmy Greaves used to say over here, it's a funny old game. And 1 minute you can be on top of the world and things are going well, and Borough, Borough were in the playoffs chasing automatic promotion last season, and this season, at the start of the season, things just have gone from bad to worse. Borough can't buy a win now, and as I say, I don't think he was being derogatory, but he was. What was your views on that?
So immediately I thought that Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker were drunk. That was my initial thought. I think they had too many pints and didn't know what to talk about, so they brought up the Borough. And then I was listening a little bit further, and I took it. It was interesting just to hear the lads talk, and it's unfortunately true. I mean, end of last season, everyone was raving about how good Michael Carrick was. He was, he pretty much could have had any job in the land. You even had Tony saying, or Mogga saying, he thinks Michael Carrick's one of the brightest, youngest managers in the championship.
Yeah,
and,
he did.
And there was a few others that were just, couldn't sing his praise high enough. And fast forward a couple of months and we're bottom of the table without a win. And, now he's, not so much of a bright talent. He's not so exciting, and you know what I mean? And he probably, doesn't shave enough. People are now don't even like his beard for, quickly things turn. So it's interesting to see. But look, they have every right to comment on it. And I think in the headlines today, we've seen another ex-England international player coming out and having a crack as well. But look, when you're down the bottom, it's easy to attract, all types of comments and views from, everyone. And it's easy to sort of, from the outside looking in. But, internally, I think there's still a big calm and a big enthusiasm that Michael Carrick's the right man. And I think there's still belief in there that at the moment that he's the right man to take it, to turn it all around. And look, I don't know about Alan or Gary, and thanks for listening, by the way, boys. I know you're out there. But next time, I don't know. Yeah, why don't you call Carrick, Alan? Because I don't remember how did Shearer go managing, Steve?
Well, I tell you what. Let's talk about that when we get into the, when we go past the headlines, because that was a topic we were going to discuss yesterday. But I thought I'd keep it for you, mate. Yeah. Which was do ex-players make good managers? Yeah. As we know, Shearer, did manage Newcastle. We can talk about that, I guess, after the headlines.
Took the tune down, didn't he?
We'll talk about it after the headlines.
All right, let's start with some headlines this morning.
I'll kick it off because I am back. It's good to have you. Happy Friday morning, Borough fans. I hope you're all well. Excited about Southampton this weekend, and here are your Middlesbrough headlines. Are you ready, Middlesbrough fans? As you enjoy your cup of tea. Now, towards the end of last season, right, we obviously had Michael Carrick right on top, but now we've had Alan Shearer, Gary Lineker come out and take a pop, and now Carlton Palmer is the latest ex-England international to take aim at Middlesbrough's poor start to the season. Palmer couldn't hide his concerns about how Middlesbrough had fared this season, but he believes that it's not for the reasons many would have expected. He said Michael Carrick needs to do something defensively. Palmer started. Middlesbrough have been poor, conceding 14 goals, and only Rotherham and Southampton have conceded more in the championship. But losing the goals that Archer and Akpom provided is also a big blow. In more positive news, Matt Clark is on the comeback trail after playing for the first time in almost a year. The big central defender, summer signing from Brighton Hove Albion in 2022, played 45 minutes of a behind closed doors game for the under-21s against Carlisle United at Rockcliffe Park on Wednesday. Clark is on the comeback trail from a bad back injury he suffered last year. And finally, Carrick has come out and said there's no update currently on Alex Bangura or Marcus Forss, with the head coach still waiting to discover the severity of the duo's injuries. Both missed the game in midweek against Sheffield Wednesday, and Bangura was obviously forced off in the second half of his debut at Blackburn last week with what was thought to be a hamstring injury, while Forss has a bad thigh problem. Both players missed the midweek draw, as I said, at Sheffield Wednesday, and Carrick says at this stage it's unclear whether they'll be in contention to be involved on Saturday when Southampton visit the Riverside.
Right, you should have put in their midweek board draw.
Oh, I was saving that for Sunderland, mate. So, but unfortunately, you guys won. So.
Okay, from a Newcastle perspective, Saudi Arabia Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS, has shrugged off any accusations of sport washing and said he'll continue to do just that if it helps his country grow economically. Saudi Arabia's sovereign investment fund, PIF, own Newcastle United, as well as having an investment in a host of major worldwide companies such as Disney, the Bank of America and Facebook. Former Liverpool and Fulham midfielder Danny Murphy has hailed Jacob Murphy's brilliant reaction to the Champions League music ahead of kick-off against AC Milan. The boyhood Newcastle United fans started against last season's Champions League finalists, helping the Magpies earn what could be an important point in their return to Europe. Murphy couldn't hide his joy ahead of kick-off with a huge smile on his face with the Champions League music booming around the San Siro. And Newcastle return to Premier League action on Sunday against Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. It's a 4:30 kick-off live on Sky Sports, and all away section tickets have been sold. Joe Linton and Joe Willock are both out, while Emil Kraft is back in training, but yet to make a plane return. The availability of Martin Dubravka is to be confirmed. Paul Heckingbottom's side remain winless since the Premier League return, beaten at home by Crystal Palace, Manchester City, and on the road by Nottingham Forest and Spurs. Their only point to date came in a 2-2 draw with Everton at Bramall Lane. Ollie McBurney will be missing due to suspension, and there'll be a fitness check for George Baldock.
Smashing, thank you very much. And I'll do the Sunderland headlines as well. The campaign might only be a couple of weeks old, and Tony Mowbray will have no interest at all looking at the table. But one conclusion can be drawn, and that's according to Dominic Shaw at the Northern Echo, is that Sunderland are better than they were last season. Last season was no fluke. Not that anybody on Wearside thought it was the case, but the Black Cats were something of a surprise package at the end of last year, particularly with Ahmad's return to Manchester United and the exit of Ross Stewart. A lot of people thought how we would do this year, but Mowbray said on Wednesday night, I think the team are better than last season. I know we had Ahmad, who was an amazing individual footballer, but I feel that the positional play of the team is much better this year. Tony Mowbray has also praised Sunderland Diamond defender Dan Ballard after his key role in the Blackburn win, and admits he does not know how high the ceiling could be for the former Arsenal man. Mowbray is well placed to make a judgment about centre-backs, of course, with more than 500 appearances under his belt, and he was full of compliments for the Northern Ireland international Ballard in the wake of this week's 3-1 win at Ewood Park. He's an outstanding defender, he's a brilliant footballer, said Mowbray. I say we're lucky to have him, but it was a brilliant recruit to bring Dan Ballard to this club. He's a diamond of a lad. And the opening Nation League encounter between England's women and Scotland's women has sold out. Wow, sold out at the Stadium of Light. What does that feel like? Over 48,000 fans will attend the game at Sunderland Stadium of Light this evening. And if you weren't lucky enough to get a ticket, it will be on ITV1 as well as streamed on ITVX. And just one last little note, former Black Cats Marcus Stewart has organised a charity cycle ride to 7 of his former clubs in 7 days in October, and that's part of Marcus's campaign to increase the awareness of MND in football, along with raising much needed funds to eradicate this horrendous disease. The event will raise money for Derby Rimmer MND Foundation, and Marcus has chosen charity, and he's hoping to raise over £20,000 for donations and sponsorship. Marcus himself discovered he had MND in January 2022 and publicly revealed his diagnosis last year. The ride is fully supportive, and if you'd like to get involved, you can drop an email to the contact ride organiser Peter Tubb, which is Marcus's uncle, on ptub@hotmail.co.uk, and we wish Marcus all the very best with that. That's your Sunderland news.
Yes, I agree with I'm sure the lads echo that as well. For Marcus, horrible disease, wishing him all the best. And yeah, I think he's going to appear at the finishing line at Ipswich, Ipswich's Portman Road, and get paraded at half time. So yeah, that would be interesting. And just on the Carlton Palmer thing, him coming out and speaking about Michael Carrick, I just wanted to say I don't think Carlton Palmer's came out with the intention of having a go at Michael Carrick. I think he was probably asked about it with him, with his links to Southampton, and of course that's who Borough play on Saturday. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of stick off for Carlton Palmer next. I think he'll have been asked about it, whereas I think the other two, Shearer and Lineker, probably came out of their own accord and sort of gave us their opinions on the matter.
Well, the bottom line is they're doing a podcast now, Macca, like I said yesterday.
Yeah.
And Alan Shearer, Gary Lineker and Mika Richards do a weekly podcast. So, it's obviously going to be, it's like us doing this show. You have to have a topic to talk about each day. So, and I genuinely don't think Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker were having a go. It was simply it's an observation, and we have observations. It's just one of those things. I just think, they are right. At the moment, what is happening with Michael Carrick is the polar opposite of what was happening last year. And you can go from hero to zero very quickly in football, whether you're a manager or a player. And I think that was what they were trying to say. Carlton Palmer, I would think, a lot less of his opinion because of what he achieved in football, to be perfectly honest, than I would have, Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker. But it's all about opinions. That's what football is. It is all about opinions. But we were gonna segue into this yesterday, but we decided not to because obviously Rai wasn't able to make it. So it is that question. Do ex-players make good managers? And we've had a whole host in recent years. Macca rightly, and Ryan rightly having a pop about Alan Shearer. What I will say about Alan Shearer, as a Newcastle United legend, the Premier League's all-time goal scorer still, and captain of England, somebody who led us to a semi-final for England. Let's not forget what he did. Premier League title winner, of course, with Blackburn. The guy did achieve things in football, and it was like boyhood dreams that he achieved, stuff that we'd all like to have done ourselves. But as a manager, he came into Newcastle United under the owner, Mike Ashley, and I would say that even Alex Ferguson, even Bob Stokoe, even Brian Robson, Gareth Southgate, any of these managers would have struggled under Mike Ashley and his regime. And he took the management job at Newcastle with less than 10 games to go, and he was on a hiding to nothing. The dressing room was split. Newcastle United had a load of overpaid, big egoed players who clearly couldn't play together and wouldn't play together, and he was up against it from day one. But he had the guts to take the job on as a Newcastle fan, as a Newcastle legend, and unfortunately, he fell short. The one game he did win, which put a smile on our face, was of course against Middlesbrough at home. But the big disappointments and the two things that went wrong that season were, in that spell that Shearer had, was a 1-1 draw against Fulham when Mark Viduka had a goal disallowed, which should have stood. Had VAR been around, he would have that goal would have stood, which would have made all the difference. And of course, Alan Shearer versus Joey Barton. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Barton was undoubtedly a talented player, but obviously had problems, going on off the pitch, and clearly didn't like being told what to do. Alan Shearer and him had a Barney, and he went out against Liverpool and got sent off. And that in itself, more or less, finished our season, I felt anyway. But Shearer wanted to have the opportunity to bring Newcastle back up, and basically had that assurances from Mike Ashley that he was going to continue the job, and then the phone never rang. And Mike Ashley treated Alan Shearer, a Newcastle United legend, with contempt. And I think after he did that, there was no way back with the Newcastle fans. He'd already dismissed Keegan, upset Keegan, another club legend. And I just think Newcastle fans were never going to forgive him for doing it, not once but twice, to two of the clearly the best players that we've had in our time. Other than that, from your perspective, lads, I mean, Rai, this was a topic you wanted to bring up. Can you think of a manager who's come in and as an ex-player and done well? Has there been some at Borough? I mean, Brian Robson played for the club, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's a great question that I wanted to ask, because we're seeing a lot, obviously, of the generation that I sort of grew up watching turning into managers. And obviously, my generation, I think of, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, those types, of influential, players of the generation turning into managers. And it seems to be a current flow. And I think it was a topic that I was sort of alluding to as well, with all the free agencies and players out there currently without a job, and whether it's just, common sense that a player would go and get his, coaching badges and move on. But there was an interesting social media video going around of a young manager, and I'm pretty sure it's a manager of a team in the National League. And I'm not going to say names or anything like that, because it was quite vulgar, but he pretty much came out and said that he's never going to get his badges. He thinks it's a waste of time. Why would he need badges or proof that he can manage, when the proof is in the pudding that the team's doing well? So he said that if they keep getting promoted, and he does have to get into the EFL at some point, that he still would refuse to get the badges And it's not like he referred it to managing a team is not like driving a bus where I've got, safety concerns. He said, all I have to do is put the boys out on the pitch and yell at them when they're doing something wrong. And now I'm paraphrasing there. He swore a lot. So it'd be pretty scary to play under him, for one. And secondly, I just thought it was a good point that, and he's actually a person that's never had any playing experience whatsoever. He was just a ex-businessman that was used to and an ex-military man who was in a higher sort of leadership role within the British military, and he turned that into managing. And I think it's interesting to see anyone step up to management without any sort of playing experience, and we've seen it a few times. I mean, there was and I'm going to have to get the lads' help here, but I think there's a young manager over in the French league that has his criteria as his resume as being pretty good at Football Manager, the PC game. And he ended up turning that into wanting to be a manager and managed to go and do his licenses, and off he went. So, and he actually never stepped foot on a football pitch, but he just loved playing like your FIFAs and your Football Managers, and then turned that into management. So it's interesting to see, but I can't remember at a time for Middlesbrough, especially in the recent decade or so, of us going out and getting a no-named manager that hasn't had some sort of criteria. I mean, Aitor Karanka, for one, was someone that was working under Jose Mourinho, and obviously Karanka was a brilliant defender for Real Madrid. Obviously Michael Carrick, we don't need to talk about his resume and where he's come from, and even prior to that, obviously Gareth Southgate as well. So we've always had ex-players or I guess well-known players from other leagues, and I think it's just something that surprises me that there's not more managers going out there and wanting to be a manager or a coach, if you would, without really playing.
I tell you what, Ray, it's a good job. You want about the bus there? It's a good job I wasn't driving the bus, because then there would be safety concerns.
There would be definitely. You'd definitely be needing some things, but. Yeah, no, it was interesting just for to hearing this National League manager's take to say that why would I need to go and get my badges or anything like that when I'm not, it's not going to, I'm not going to be hurting anyone. I'm not doing anything unsafe. I'm not going anything, he said he likened it to, I'm not working down in a mine where something could go wrong. He said, I'm simply having to tell lads how to play football and get them up and about for the game. And he refused to. He literally refused. They said, "What if your club keeps getting promoted into the EFL?" He said, "Well, they can come find me and make me get my badges, because it's just a waste of bloody time." So it was just interesting to see. Oh, it's massively arrogant, and the way he was talking was, he was swearing his head off and all that sort of stuff, but. It was a bit, I guess you could say it was disrespectful to the EFL, and I'm sure he would, get fined through the ringer if he did come up without, badges and stuff like that. But it just seems a natural progression, and I think I want to talk about it later in the show as well for all the lads out there at the moment that are free agents or players that just get cut and just there's nothing for them after that. Whether it's just normal for them to go and get their badges at the moment for currently getting their badges right now is Dimi Konstantopoulos. Oh my goodness, I hope I got that out right. The goalkeeper from Barrow days, and Lee Tomlin. Lee Tomlin, obviously an ex Middlesbrough midfielder at the moment. They're both getting them there, and they both have recently retired in the past year from senior football. And they've said look, instead of going to get a normal job, why would they when they love football still? And they said the natural progression for any player after they retire is to go and get your coaching badges. So it's just interesting for me that, that players, when they do retire or if they're forced to retire, I think of, Jesse Lingard at the moment sitting there without a club. What's Jesse meant to do? Because I don't see Jesse Lingard with his antics being a manager. So, where's he meant to end up now? And it's just interesting to me that there's not more done for players after football, I guess, apart from just go and get your coaching badges, lad.
Have Sunderland ever had a player manager? I don't think they have.
I was just trying to think back.
Because I was thinking about Kevin Ball, but he hung up his boots in 2000.
Caretaker charge, didn't he?
Yeah, but he hung up his boots in 2002, so he didn't, because he took over Sunderland in 2006. Yeah. So So I don't think Sunderland have ever had a caretaker player manager or a player manager. I don't think they've ever had.
Not in my lifetime, I don't think. No, but I'm sure there's someone out there that's listening and will probably correct us.
No, but I can't think of any. I mean, obviously the ones that stick out to me, obviously Kenny Dalglish at Liverpool, Graham Souness. I think he did it at Rangers.
Dalglish won. Dalglish did the ultimate, didn't he? Because Dalglish,
he did.
1986. He wasn't just player manager. He scored the goal that won the title.
Yeah. I mean, even Peter Reid, who we had on the show, he did it at Man City. I'm sure of it. I'm sure he played when he was coaching at Man City. So there was. I'm pretty sure we had Pete on the other week. So I'm pretty sure he did as well. But
Roy Race at Roy of the Rovers. He was a legend.
Yeah.
He was a
and
top.
Wayne Rooney in more recent years, wasn't he? But didn't Wayne Rooney start? He was playing at Derby, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
He was playing at Derby and then he became manager there as well. So in more recent years, I'm pretty sure. But it's just interesting for me just to see how many players just go straight into management and how many players that don't seem to want to go into any other line of work, but just say and it's even some players, and notably, it's normally your captain or your big vocal lad, Vincent Kompany, for instance, that seems to make a more natural progression into coaching because they're already been leaders of men. Do you know what I mean? They've already been out there as a captain, and it's just funny to see, when you see a quieter lad that might have been kicking around in the midfields or even your strikers or something like that become a manager when it wasn't really expected, sort of thing. So, and for us, Daz, Gary Monk, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Gary Monk was always a pretty vocal, loud-mouthed player. I remember coming up against him for Swansea. And then, it was just natural for him to step into that sort of management role sort of thing.
Wasn't Mike Williamson player manager of Gateshead? When he first started?
He still plays.
I'm sure he played still, didn't? Yeah, I thought he did. OJ was just one that came to mind. That was all,
Gaza did it as well at Boston. Was it Boston United?
Yeah.
I think he went to Boston United. He was only there for about 40 days or something. But I think
Giggs did it as well, didn't he? Ryan Giggs. I think Ryan Giggs did it at Man United at one point there as well.
He filled in at Manchester United. And
once Moyes got the sack, I think, didn't he?
Middlesbrough legend Gordon Strachan, of course.
What
Gordon,
a legend that is. Yeah, love Gordon. Thank you so much.
Bring that back up.
Newcastle legend Ruud Gullit, another one. I think he was a
Ruud Gullit as well. Yeah,
he loved himself. That if he was chocolate, he would have eaten himself. And I think as well, there's a Premier League manager now as well, Vincent Kompany. He's another one who's done the same. I think there's extra pressure on doing that. I think you're just creating extra pressure for yourself.
Completely agree.
When you are player manager, and it takes a special person to be able to do it. And I think Dalglish was certainly somebody who handled it really well. That was just I started following Newcastle 83, 84, and Liverpool were the team to beat. They were the team in Europe, lifting European trophies, winning everything. And it was just like he was the kind of player you wanted to be. Dalglish, he was absolutely world class. I've
got a question for you lads. And it stemmed from this, and I want to know. I guess it's two questions. All right, don't get up me. Okay, I'm going to put two questions out to you, and you got to answer both. Okay, right. So it's the two-parter. How do I word this? Probably with a question, right? Let's go. So it's. Do you think it's okay for a manager to be in charge of a club while they're still undertaking their badges? And two, what job in this world would allow you to do it without having the qualification for that job, or you are undertaking the job?
We've got the news, right?
I was just about to say.
We've got the news.
Yeah, what I was about to say there was that's a very good trail, because what we'll do is we'll take a little break. And then we'll come back.
What a question from Rye, though. I've got them all.
Two crackers there.
What a question. You're giving them time to think about it now as well.
I know, yeah, great. We will find out the answers to those questions when we come back after this.
Now then, do you do sales? Do you fancy a great career challenge? Well, the Red, the Cat and the Toon has a full-time vacancy for a special sales exec. Not only will you be responsible for generating the vital revenue needed to see the North East's newest radio business grow, but you'll grow too. Show us you can do the business and you'll soon become Group Sales Director. Our stations are flying. We have the three legends back on air. Then there's the one that most are talking about, the North East Footy Brekky show. And there's more to come. Gumption and creativity count more to us than years. You may only have 2 or 3 years selling experience, but if you get what we're trying to achieve, you will be the right fit. You'll ideally be located in Tyneside or Wearside. This will be a hybrid working role. It's a full-time basic plus commission position. So come on, think you have what it takes? Then give us a shout. Email any of the 3 stations. That's hello@thetoonuk.com, hello@thecatuk.com, or hello@thereduk.com.
Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
The Cat, the Tune and the Red.
7:37 on the North East Footy Breakfast. Rye, you left us with a very interesting couple of questions to ponder during Duran.
I'm still trying to work out what they were.
Same, mate, same.
I don't think I really worded them very, very well. But my question was to the lads and to all the pundits out there, good morning, happy Friday to you all. Hope you're all fantastic, safe and well. And Borough fans, an extra good morning to you. And I hope your tea is a little bit sweeter this morning than any Newcastle or Sunderland fans out there, because you guys don't need any more. All the Borough fans need it more.
Get on with your question.
Is this the question?
I asked the question.
Yeah.
I asked the question to the lads. What do you guys think of managers that are currently in jobs managing a team while they're still getting their coaching badges? So, i.e., they're not qualified to be a coach according to the EFL, but the EFL allows them to do it because they're currently undertaking their qualifications. And then on the flip side of that, what job in the civilian world would allow you to do the job whilst undertaking or without the qualification that's needed for it? Go on, Steve.
Go on, Steve.
I'm still trying to work it out. No, but I'm joking to say that. It does happen. It does happen. You can get into that position where you're still taking certain badges, but you're not going to walk into a job at Newcastle United if you're still learning your trade. Not now. Maybe he's under Mike Ashley. He would have given the tea lady the job at Newcastle. I'm sure. If it meant that he was paying her less money. But I get your point. I get where you're coming from, and there are jobs. There are jobs where you can step into the job, and part of the job entails doing something where you have to do like a course for it, or you have to learn something. But there's not many jobs you could do that. I'm struggling to think of a job where you would say, well, look, police officer. Right, when you become a police officer in the UK, then you go for your fitness test. You have to fill in an entrance exam. Once you get past that first stage, and you get accepted, and you've proved your fitness, and you've proved you're at the correct level of intelligence, then you go on to a 2-year probation, I believe. So basically, once you go on to that 2-year probation, you sign your forms, you go on to the basic pay with the police, but you are then learning for the next 2 years. You're a probationary police officer. So you would go out on the beat with an experienced police officer, and you're learning the trade. So because it's such an intense job, and it's a job where you have to learn so many things, predominantly the law, it takes 2 years to train to be a fully qualified police officer. So that is probably the best example in the UK of a job where you're learning on the job. You don't know everything, and you're thrown into it. And at the end of the 2 years, if you don't pass to the standard that you're expected, then it's good night Vienna. You're out on your ear. So I guess that's probably the best way, the best thing to describe it as. I mean, you tend to find with football managers that you have to be at a certain level before you take the job. So you know, you have to do your various coaching courses, and you have to follow the ladder up the FA ladder to get to where you are with your coaching badges. I mean, I don't know the full set now, but you know, back in the day, you'd have to take it from junior level to, you know, go all the way through your kids, you know, the kids levels of coaching, you know, 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then go to, you know, I guess if you want to be a top class manager, take your UEFA coaching badges, etc. And I mean, a lot of ex-players do it. I can probably reel off a couple of Newcastle players who I've done talk-ins with over the years. Steve Howie's one. Steve Harper is another. Just to name two, you know, former Newcastle players who have got their coaching badges but never really, you know, got the opportunity to go into management. Another couple who I work with on a regular basis, Lee Clark and Steve Watson, have both ventured into management. They've got their full coaching badges. They've managed at the lower level. They've managed in Scotland. Lee's managed abroad. Obviously, he's one of the legends on a Friday night show. So, you know, he's done quite well. But it's such a hard thing to get into, and you don't always get the opportunity like Gerrard, Lampard have got, you know, in recent years, and I guess the other thing to chuck in as well is, because we seem to be making this like a manager special today, but is you know, where should those kind of managers start? You know, should they be given the opportunity to jump in at the big end and go with the Rangers and then jump to Aston Villa? Or should they be doing what Wayne Rooney and you know, and Lampard did, which is, you know, at least start a little bit lower down the pyramid and learn your craft? Shearer went straight in at the deep end, and look what happened to him. I've already explained why.
Exactly.
Yeah, he took the tune down.
Yeah, he took the tune down. Yes, okay, Macca. But yeah, right. I mean, what's it like in Australia, Rai? Is there a job that you can think of where you're learning on the job?
Oh, yeah, don't know. Not that I can.
It's your question.
I know.
I was going to say.
I was riddling it for its thing. But the reason I bring it up is because it's Gareth Southgate. Gareth Southgate, when he came into Middlesbrough, right, he was chosen by Steve Gibson to succeed McLaren. Obviously, McLaren went on to do to replace Sven Goran Eriksson at the England job, right? But when Gareth Southgate took over at Middlesbrough, he could initially only be appointed for 12 weeks because he didn't have any coaching qualifications. But then he was allowed to stay on as manager because he got special dispensation from the Premier League board in November of 2006, right? And then Middlesbrough had to front the board and successfully argue that because Southgate was recently an international player, that he couldn't undertake his coaching courses and that he would be able to do them now. So it's just like, it seems a bit farcical back then, and it doesn't seem to happen now. But can you imagine going to a job and it wouldn't happen here in Australia? There's no way. But I couldn't go down to my local you know, grocery store and say, righto, I'm going to be your butcher. I'm going to learn how to cut meat on the job, and you know, and while I'm here, I'll go and, you know, do my butcher's licensing and all that sort of stuff. But I'm right here, right now. Give me a knife. You know what I mean? It wouldn't happen. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I'd be cutting pork, serving it as a steak, sort of thing. So like, it's incredible for me to see coaches now, you know, what they have to go through, and obviously to be a manager, and how, I mean, to Southgate, that's where it stemmed from, that question, and he's now coaching England. But when he initially became a coach, he was literally had just stopped playing for Middlesbrough, and then we had to get special dispensation to make him a coach, and now he's managing England. It's incredible.
I'm sure Daz will agree, but you know, I think we're all learning on this job, because we all talk nonsense, but we're still here somehow. So, and we do it on a regular basis.
Course?
So.
I did
you speak for yourself.
Course. What's going on? What the heck? What is going on, mate? When I tell you what, when we mentioned sports washing earlier, I had to Google what sports washing was. I didn't know what it was. I thought people washing
when you
cars
clean your
or something
balls
like that.
after a muddy game of football.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought it was. A sort of sport washing. Is that some sort of, you know, pitch preparation or something? But I had to Google what that was, and I learned on the job.
Move on.
But don't forget, Steve mentioned it earlier there about Lee Clark and the Legend Show. Obviously, you can tune into that tonight at 6:00. Lee Clark, Darren Williams, and Craig Hignett on the Tune and the Cat. So yeah, it's always worth a listen.
Absolutely great show, and also followed by Ian Murter as well. Black and white and red all over his show. Follows the three legends as well. Yeah, the Gareth Southgate point is a really good one, because there was Gareth, thrown in at the deep end. Arguably he wasn't given enough time. A lot was made of his coaching badges, and there he is, in the top job in England, doing a fantastic job with England as well. How time has changed.
Not wrong. It's funny how Steve Gibson can see, some potential in these managers. He's picked up Gareth Southgate. He's picked up, Jonathan Woodgate as well, who went on to, I would say, be quite successful at Bournemouth. And he's seen potential in these young managers, but they never seem to work out under him. It's always when they go on to the next jobs or so that they seem to be more successful, which is incredible for, unlucky for Steve. But speaking of Steve, I wanted to bring up another question for you lads on this beautiful Friday morning, and I hope you're all fantastic, safe and well, wherever you're listening from. But I'm making you earn your dollars this morning, and I wanted to ask you guys about West Brom. Obviously, West Brom are in some big trouble, and we've seen recent reports now of West Brom being up to $55 million in debt. And we are now starting to see reports that players might start not getting their wages paid, and all sorts of rumours coming out of West Brom. Now, a couple of years ago, West Brom were top flying. It in the Prem, pretty solid Premier League team as well. They've had great history down at West Brom. Is it, lads, another team that's going to fall to the financial fair play? A team that probably hasn't met financial fair play for a couple of seasons and are now paying the price of spending too much money? And do we feel sorry for a club that has gone and spent too much money, or do we sort of have to? Are we forced to feel sorry because the club could just liquidate, Steve?
It's not looking good, is it, at the moment? I mean, they were talking a couple of days ago about potentially having to have a fire sale in January, selling the vast majority of their players. And, from my perspective, I think we've discussed it on the show before, it's desperate situations for some of these clubs. I mean, a lot of these clubs, some of them big name clubs like West Brom, will have suffered through COVID in particular. Vast stadiums standing empty for such a long period of time, when these clubs potentially were struggling financially to start with. Suddenly to not have that, fans pouring through the stadium, and paying for season tickets, and paying for drinks and food at the ground, and all the kind of things that football clubs in the pyramid rely on to keep going. Suddenly to have that all taken away from you and have very little help from the government, it cascaded down the football pyramid and ended up ruining a lot of clubs. And I think there's a lot of clubs on the brink. I think West Brom is West Brom's the tip of the iceberg, and if a team like West Brom is going to have to start selling players to survive, then it's desperate time, it's desperate measures. And we've said that, said this for long enough, but the Premier League is the showcase league. It's the league which essentially people talk about worldwide. It's supposed to be the best league in the world, but they don't share the wealth, and the FA, they've got better over the years. The money does get passed down to some of these smaller clubs, but there needs to be some kind of help for clubs down the pyramid, because we're going to end up in another situation where we'll lose a club like Bury. Well, it was Bury we lost, in recent years. Or clubs who can't finance themselves end up dropping down the leagues. We were talking about it the other day about some of the big names that are in the National League now. Hartlepool, big North East team, struggling in the National League, along with a couple of other big names. Oldham Athletic, who I think I mentioned were in the Premier League when Newcastle were the entertainers back in the 90s. So it's an awful situation for West Brom, and they want to take over. Well, in all intents and purposes, who is going to look at West Brom as a team worth taking over at the moment? I don't know whether people out there would look at it as a viable option. If you looked in the Championship, and looked at the clubs who are in the Championship, there are bigger and better clubs who would be worth the gamble. People, clubs with a better infrastructure. I've said it before, but I still think that Sunderland and Middlesbrough, both got purpose-built stadiums now. But at least their infrastructure is sound and it's good, and they've got fan bases. They've got fan bases who, if the club's doing well and they're performing well, who can sell their grounds out. So I don't think West Brom is a club that any overseas investor would be looking at and saying, yeah, that's worth a gamble. It's more likely you would get a local consortium of businessmen who would probably look at taking over West Brom, but it's not good. I hate to see it, because it's the fans that I feel sorry for. Fans who've done what we've done. They've invested their emotional connection to a football club, who they're the ones who will be suffering.
I agree with that.
I
totally agree with that. The fans are definitely the ones that suffering. The people the people at the hierarchy at clubs, I don't think when they're overspending and stuff like that. And we were paying out astronomical wages at Sunderland. I don't think the people at the top of the clubs give the fans any thought whatsoever when they're doing that. With the thought that it might come back and bite them on the backside, and that's exactly what it's done to West Brom. And I would hate to be sort of the thought of like I explained the other day, the thought of losing your club, something that that you're not just, it's when you're a fan of a club, you're not just a fan of a club for 90 minutes. Look at this show. We come on this show every day. We're all fans of clubs, and it becomes ingrained in your life. Sometimes your club lasts longer than your relationships. You know what I mean? So it's I do. I feel for the West Brom fans, because they're a good set of fans. I like going down to West Brom, good club, but it's a shame that they just haven't been managed right.
Daz, do you think it's becoming all too common? I mean, I feel like every season, especially in the Championship, not in the Premier League as much, but definitely in the Championship or League One, there always seems to be a club that's financially struggling. And we always seem to see one or two clubs get deductions in points, or, we saw Bolton just recently, we saw Portsmouth just recently, we've seen we saw Derby as well. Most seasons have got one or two stories of a club that are financially in strife. And obviously this season now looks like it's going to be West Brom. Is it becoming too common that clubs are we're starting to see such big clubs in such financial mess?
I think it's indicative of the times, isn't it? There's so much pressure on teams to be going out and to be competing with other teams who may have, owners that have got a lot more cash or that can put more money into the team. The transfer market is crazy, has gone crazy in terms of the prices that teams are having to pay. And I think it's a sign of the times that more and more teams are struggling like this. And we're lucky. We've got Steve Gibson, who's putting £1 million a month, is it, into the club. Not every team has that, and you look at League One and League Two as well to an extent. But you look at League One and you look at some of the teams that are in there. You mentioned Bolton. There are others. Wigan is another one that weren't very long ago that were in the Premier League or in the top.
Portsmouth, mate. Think of Portsmouth. They used to be.
They were playing in Europe at one point, and you think, how's it gone from European football, Premier League football, down to League One, And I wonder. It's not a coincidence that all these teams that are in League One, like your Boltons, your Derbys, your Pompeys, and
Reading,
and Wigan, Reading, and it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that these used to be Premier League clubs, and they've tried to spend to stay in the Premier League because they want all the lucrative stuff that the Premier League, being in the Premier League, brings you, and ultimately it's snookered them, and they've gone down, and they've not just gone down to the Championship, they've gone down to League One. And
I think you've got to look at some of these teams as well at the financial management. You've got to look at, do these teams have the experience to be able to manage the finances, to manage what's going on and off the field enough to remain in those positions, and quite often it isn't. They don't have that experience, which is why they topple down the or there's something going on with the ownership, or there's something going on in the background at the club that means that the eye is taken off the ball, and they start to go down the leagues. And I think it's a real worry, if you've got teams like West Brom who are in this dire situation. It could happen to any of us. It could happen to any of our teams.
Of course,
that's a scary
problem.
part.
Yeah.
It is. It is a big problem, and a lot needs to be done about this. You need to address it, I think, and
completely agree.
I'm sure it will, but I sadly think that it's going to take a team like West Brom going out of business, or dropping down the leagues and falling out the league to almost raise this kind of issue. It's not a great storyline if a club like West Brom drop, but then do the powers that be care? Where were they when Oldham dropped through the leagues? And
who steps in exactly?
There are fairy tales, of course. We've seen it with Luton. Luton have come. They've done the reverse. Yeah, and Leicester, they've done the reverse trip. You know what I mean? They've come from the bottom and rose like a phoenix from the ashes and come all the way through. I mean, but then the gap between the Championship and the Premiership is evident when you see how Luton have got off to their kind of start this season. But as I say, it's up to the fans. The fan power definitely works. We're testament to that at Newcastle. Sometimes you've got to sacrifice something to get what you want. 10,000 people walked away from Newcastle, which I still think was the straw that broke the camel's back, along with COVID, because Ashley was losing money hand over fist and decided it was time to go. But sometimes protesting is the way forward. And if you think your club's been mismanaged and you're not happy with the way things are going, then get onto your supporters trust, get onto your supporters group, have a meeting, work out some kind of legal way that you can protest against your club, and go through the correct channels and make a difference. I mean, Manchester United are doing that now, sit-in protests at Manchester United, but when you're battling these multi-billion-pound owners, it's so difficult. You have to screw your loaf on. You have to think outside the box, and hit them where it hurts. You hit them where it hurts, which is the pocket. But unfortunately, as well with supporters, and this is supporters the length and breadth of the country, it's like herding cats, because egos get in the way in a fan base. So many fans have their own opinions. Some people don't care. Some people just want to go and watch the football. Some people care passionately and really want to make a stand, and get the owners out. Other people are fence sitters, and they'll go with the majority. So it is so difficult to herd football supporters into a particular direction. But as I say, Newcastle United fans, we've got quite a divided fan base at times, but we managed to do it. So if we can do it, West Brom fans can do it. I wish them all the best. They're a nice club, West Brom. I've got nothing against them. They're a good team.
Yeah, I was chatting with someone yesterday doing an interview for my show, and he was saying that there's something like 48 fan-owned clubs across the country over the 12 leagues, and he'd just been to he was doing something in Glasgow, and so he went to Clydebank, which was as a fan-owned and ran club. And he said it was great. It was proper old school. There was no seating. It was all terracing. The ultras were on the halfway line and were mostly sort of 12 or 13. He said, he paid for his ticket and got his change back out of a Tupperware box. That old school sort of thing. But what he was saying, it's a dying art. The whole thing about fan owned clubs is a fairy tale, and it's wonderful, and it's we look back and it's the fans that should have more ownership and should have more voice, but in reality, the fans, like you say, Steve, are fighting against the big boys. And I think that story about what happened at Newcastle is absolutely refreshing. The fans make a stand and make a difference. and that's, unfortunately doesn't happen a lot in football these days. And
fan power does work. It does work, but like I say, it is so difficult because it is like herding cats. That's the bottom line, and that's the difficult point. But I'll shut up. We're getting close to the news.
Yeah, we are over a little bit for the news. This is the Cat, the Toon and the Red, the North East Footy Breakfast at just 1 minute past 8. We will be back with more football chat and preview the weekend football action right after this.
From Yarm to Yibby, Harrington to Horsley Hill, Swarwell to Silverlink. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.
It's the North East Footy Breakfast with Steve and Rye and Macca, and you can get in touch with the North East Footy Breakfast very easily via WhatsApp 0330 043 2002. Just drop us a message if you've got any thoughts about the big three teams and the games this weekend, any predictions, if you've got any comments about what the lads have got to say or had to say this morning, please do get in touch 0330 043 2002. The show is yours. The Farm and All Together now on the Cat, the Toon and the Red, the North East Footy Breakfast with Steve and Rye and Macca. Good morning, 9 minutes past 8. How are we doing this morning, chaps? Are we okay? Are we all right for... it would help if we put the faders up there, Daz. Steve, that one was for you, The Farm.
Yeah, memories, Steve, memories.
Yes, back in the day when I was roadieing for the lads on the university tour, good old days, and top tune that, and they've just released a new single, first time in a few years.
Right.
So good to see the Farm back on the circuit, and they're going to be touring again very soon. So I won't be roadieing for them, but I will go and see them.
It would be nice if they're up in the northeast to get them on, have a chat.
Back in February, I think they're back up here in February with Peter Hook. So I think that should be that should be a time to get them on. Yeah, it'd be good to get them on.
Very good. Rye.
Yes.
I think you had something you wanted to have a chat about.
I have. So I got a question for the lads and for anyone listening out there. Good morning. Happy Friday to each and every one of you. Going into the beautiful weekend, I got a doozy of a question that I got posed to me just the other day, and I had to have a good think about it, and I wanted to ask the questions out there, and it kind of leads in well of all the financial troubles we've been talking about in the start of the show, and with West Brom and stuff like that. I want to know from the lads, and we'll go around, and I'll kick it off just to give you an idea. But what is the one thing that you would always spend top dollar on? So the one thing in the whole entire world that you would never ever cut or spend less on, because you know spending what it's worth or what its maximum worth is always going to get what you need. It could be, it could be jerseys, it could be anything to do with your club, could be on you always spend top dollar on your car because that's how it runs better, whatever it may be. And I'll give you an idea of it, because this is my answer, lads, all right? I will always in my life spend top dollar on toilet paper. Because I know for a good fact that if you spend cheap money on cheap toilet paper, my goodness me, are you in for a rough day. You are in for a rough couple of days. I will always, till the day I die, spend good money on good toilet paper for the extra ply. I'm talking 5-6 ply, whatever it takes, that soft cushioned effect, okay? Because I ain't using no sandpaper. Lads, I want to know, what is the one thing in this world you will always spend top dollar on?
I'm just wondering if you've started on the lager early here, like with these questions. What on earth is this all about? The listeners must be scratching their heads, thinking this is a sports show. Into some kind of
donkey to drink.
Well, people were talking that they'd always spend top dollar on ticket pricing. They'll always spend spend money on whatever it may be. And it got me thinking. It was a sports related question that got me thinking of, people would,
sports related.
It was.
Yeah.
People were
Good morning, the supermarket sweep with Australia's equivalent to Dale Winton,
people
who's talking about toilet paper.
to get to Milan for the Champions League.
The only thing I can
People
think
will
of
always
toilet,
spend-
the only reason toilet roll used to come in, and if anything to do with football, was when you used to chuck it on the pitch in the 70s, and it used to fly out of the Holgate end or the Gallagher end. Yeah, dear me, I would have been walking around the pitch collecting it and taking it home. The one thing I would never not pay top dollar on is me family, mate. That is the answer.
There you go. See, that's the type of answer. See? Now we're talking. Macca, what do you reckon? What would you always spend top dollar on?
Oh, it's like that bestest party. Can I see on air? No, I mean, in all seriousness, I would probably fish and chips, because that's my go-to. I love really nice fish and chips.
Good quality fish and chips. And what about you, Daz?
I think for me it would have to be ketchup, because you've got to get the best ketchup.
Good quality ketchup.
Yeah, and there's
There
only
you go.
one. There's only one. You can't scrimp and scrape on the ketchup. You know when people have done that, and you go somewhere and you get the watered down ketchup. It's just it's not good. People need to have a word about that. It's not right. You've got to get the top quality.
Do you get fine ketchup? Do you get fine quality ketchup in Yorkshire then, Daz, do you? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the other one I was going to say was tea. I always play top dollar for me tea. I'm not any. You can't get my mum's tea bags. No, none of that. It's it's your Yorkshire tea all the way. It's got to be the best.
It's a great question, and I want to know, if you're out there listening, get on the WhatsApp. Let me know what you'd always spend top dollar on. As we talk, we'll get back to the footy, so we keep young Steve Wraith happy. We'll talk about. We've been talking a lot today about the money in football and the and where it's going and where it's coming from, and the highest rise in free agent footballers. We are seeing this season alone the highest amount of free agent footballers left without a club than we've ever had. Now, obviously, we keep seeing each transfer window the most amount of money spent on players. We see players going, wages going up. We're seeing ridiculous fees. We saw Declan Rice. Mo Salah getting offered almost 200 mil. We're seeing prices for the top end players going up and up. But we're also seeing an increase in free agent players that are being left behind. Currently, right now, we're seeing Sancho. Jadon Sancho's career at United, the back papers to today, you will see over the Sun and everything, is that Jadon's career at United's over. And that they're happy to just show him the door and take a cut price fee. There's players that are out there that we can riddle off a massive lift that have got no job right now because they cannot get a game anywhere. And I know, Steve, you were talking the other day about players actually playing to go and get some game time, hiring out pitches so they can go and, keep fit and all that sort of stuff. Is there enough being done, lads, for footballers that are left without clubs, or is it okay for a player, for a club, once they've cut ties, for the club to go wash their hands and say, righto, we're off to take care of who we've actually got at the club, and what is it of those? What can those lads, realistically go and do?
For me, I think that you're right. That there is some high-profile names. Jesse Lingard, who Newcastle were linked with last season. I'm so glad we didn't get him. David De Gea, Manchester United.
Massive one.
Eden Hazard is another one.
Yep.
You've also got Phil Jones, Manchester United. So there's four. There's four players. There's four big names, but I would say the clubs don't have any. They don't need to be looking after these players. These players are players who will undoubtedly have made big money at the time at the club. Phil Jones and David De Gea will be millionaires 20 times over, I'm sure, if they've invested their money correctly. They won't be short of a few quid. I don't think they'll be downgrading to a two-bedroomed semi-detached house anytime soon. So ultimately, those kind of players are players who, should, look, if you want a job back in football, then you should be out there pushing yourself, selling yourself, getting your agent to get on the phone and push. They're clearly not that interested in playing football if they're not back in. David De Gea could walk into most teams, and some of it comes down to personal choice. Players only have a certain shelf life. Once you get past a certain age, Premier League clubs won't take the gamble. Then it comes down to personal choice of the player whether they want to drop down the leagues. You find very few players nowadays will go from Premiership to Championship, and dare I say it, down to Division 1. It used to be the case. You used to see players work their way back down the leagues, until they couldn't kick a ball anymore. But nowadays that just doesn't happen. But I don't think it's the responsibility of the clubs. They get paid a vast amount of money in the top leagues. I think there should be more care and consideration maybe to players who get kicked out before they've even had a chance to sign a professional contract. I think that's where it's wrong. I think that's where it's wrong in the system. I think that players who get led up the garden path, if you like, given the opportunity to to get to the under 21s, under 23s, whatever, and then get booted out, don't get a professional contract, and they're left on the football scrap heap. I think there needs to be a little bit more care and consideration for those kind of players, because ultimately they haven't had the opportunity to make that kind of money. They've been sold a dream. In essence, they'll have built their hopes up, and for whatever reason, they haven't been good enough at that particular football club. So maybe there should be more effort to try and find these players, another job in football. And this is where the link up, I think, comes with the likes of Gateshead, Hartlepool, Darlington, South Shields, Spennymoor, Dunstan, whatever. Any of these clubs, any of these semi-professional clubs who find themselves outside the football league. Maybe there should be like a conveyor belt to say, look, we work with Gateshead. They've got potential there. You can go and speak to somebody there. You might have an opportunity with them. If not, go and speak to Hartlepool or Darlington, because you just never know. You never know. Just because a particular football club doesn't think that you are good enough to be a professional footballer in the Premier League doesn't mean you couldn't make it at the lower leagues. And you could just find, like Peter Beardsley did. Peter Beardsley was rejected by Manchester United. He was rejected by many other clubs as well. He ended up being spotted by Bob Moncur, who was manager at Carlisle at the time. He took him on. He gave him a 2-year contract, and the rest's history. Peter Beardsley then, Bob Stokoe didn't fancy Peter Beardsley, didn't like him, didn't like his style of play. He got an opportunity to go to Vancouver Whitecaps, and then in Vancouver, where he was playing against the likes of Pele and George Best, he revelled in that kind of atmosphere. He had a couple of great years at Vancouver, and then Newcastle United were on the phone, and Peter Beardsley came back to be a legend at Newcastle, but also a legend at Liverpool. He won leagues, he won cups. He's trophy cabinets full, kind of thing. So it can happen. It can happen. But just because you get rejected at a big club doesn't mean that it's all over. But yeah, I'd like to see more towards the younger players than some of these overpaid Premiership players who now find themselves out of a job.
Hopefully that's answered your question, Rai.
Well, I just feel. I mean, it's just more about, obviously, and I completely agree. It's the players you don't know. It's the players that don't have that big name. Now, it's easy for us to see David De Gea and the like, Jesse Lingard, obviously, notably without a club. It's it keeps coming up into discussion. But what about the boys that the under 19 Middlesbrough lads or the Sunderland lads, the Newcastle lads that have been let go in the summer? That the no names, the ones we know. Does anyone check in on them? How is that 21-year-old going that has been dropped by Middlesbrough and was all set on, my life's going to be at Middlesbrough. I'm going to be playing my future at Middlesbrough. What about the kids that have had their families pick up and move because Sunderland gave them the opportunity for a young kid in London, but it hasn't quite worked out? Now his family's picked up and moved to Sunderland. Do you know what I mean? And it would happen. It happens here in Australia in Australian sports, and it's just, for me, a situation that I think is going to get ever more increasing as we see clubs striving for success more and more, so that it becomes more cutthroat to those players that just maybe aren't quite up for it. And I just worry that there's not enough done there for a younger player. And we spoke about it early this week and also late last week on the show about mental health in players. And how much it affects players these days and how much social media has to play and stuff like that. But it's incredible for me just to see how many, you could say, like Steve said, perfect, that being led up the garden path. This is what your future looks like. I mean, imagine walking into the gates of Sunderland. This is what you're going to get fed. You're going to get, dietary requirements and all that sort of stuff. A month or two later, sorry, mate. You know what I mean? Or even worse, you break your ankle or whatever. Sorry, mate, we're not taking care of you. You know what I mean anymore? Like, and you've been left with a horrific injury, and off you go. It's just, I just hope that there is something out there that can, well, so I don't know if we need an organisation or something, but just to take care of these lads, because it's happening more and more.
Well, isn't there a role for the players' union there? To look after these players. They must have, cash flowing around. I mean, I don't know how much the subscriptions are for the players' union, but surely they've got a role. As Steve said, more importantly for those younger players who maybe cast aside or given an opportunity and then have it pulled away from them. Surely they've got a responsibility. Yet the clubs are a business. It's cutthroat. It's it is brutal. But surely that's what they pay their dues for, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so, and I think that obviously that's why you get young players at the clubs and that they go to college still, maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week, so that if it doesn't work out and they've went to college and they've got qualifications and stuff like that, or the colleges have came into the club, then they've got something to fall back on. You know what I mean? So I do know that, like, from an experience from somebody, and I know that even though you're at the academy, you still do your studies and stuff like that, and it's still important. It's not just a case of being at the academy and playing football and stuff like that. You've still got to have something, like you say, just in case, because just like results on the pitch, football can just turn in the blink of an eye. So it's good for these lads that they can have something to fall back on. But I just think, like you say, when the lads leave clubs and that, I personally think it's down to your agent. If the bigger names wanted to play football, they would drop down a league. You know what I mean? And it's down to their agent to get them a move. So yeah, they get paid enough. So agents as well as players. So let the agent do some work. That's what they're there for.
It did surprise me, and it does, with the Michael Carrick link-up of the Man United free agents that were made free agents in the summer, that Michael Carrick wasn't involved with any of them coming. Tuan Zebe, who went to Ipswich in the end, but, players like that, I mean, even Phil Jones or something like that, dropping, maybe they just didn't want to drop down to the championship, and, it's not, but, I keep coming back to it, but the one thing with Michael Carrick that has always been surprising is on his day that he signed with the club, he said that he would be able to use his phone book and of course he would look at some of the youngsters at United and get them down to up to Middlesbrough, and we haven't seen one of them, nor have we seen anyone from United come across to Middlesbrough in player base wise. So it's incredible that, as a club as well, that that maybe the clubs now are looking to, this whole new Brentford and Brighton model that everyone keeps talking about, is that these free agents are no-goes. If you become a free agent, then maybe clubs are more unlikely to want to take you and want to go and spend money on a youngster instead of taking you on as a free agent. And maybe the free agency market, if you will, is a dying breed. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just, once you're a free agent, that's pretty much it, because we're starting to see less and less free agents get picked back up. And whether that's, like Macca said, down to their agents or the players' ego, of them not wanting to drop down a league or anything like that. But I can't imagine, what it would be like to have a De Gea, in the championship, or even Jesse Lingard or anything like that. But it could only do wonders for certain clubs that they could go to. So
yeah, and the Man United thing links sort of puzzles me as well, because we were promised so much from those links, and nothing has materialised. I've got a question that a player's attitude on this, that if they become free agents, and they get a possible move to the Championship, or even lower wages. You've got to question what sort of conversations going on there with agents. Are agents still saying, well, look, he'll come and play in the Championship, but he still wants 30 grand a week? These guys are free agents, either because their contracts have run out or, for a reason. Surely beggars can't be choosers, can they? And what I'd like to see is some players, taking that and saying, well, do you know what? All I want to do is play. What happened to those players, who actually got into this game because they wanted to play? They've played since they were 5. They've played on the street. They've played, in every playing field going, all that stuff. They just want to play. And then they get to a point of, well, I just want to play as long as I'm getting 30 grand a week.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
It's the Saudi league, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
Saudi money.
No, but
I mean, on the flip side of it, lads, and it begs another question here. And I know we've got to take a quick break, and then we'll get into the predictions for the match weekend. But I mean, on the complete flip side of that, we see at the moment in Man City, Pep Guardiola coming out and saying that currently Man City are in big trouble because they've got so many injuries, and that they've only been able to name 6 outfield players in the Champions League games. Do we then feel sorry for a club like Man City who have got all the money in the world are too short on players?
Now look at how many they've got on loan. They've probably got more than 2 teams out on loan. I know they had loads of players out on loan. I think it was last season they had the most out on loan. So bring them back, give them a chance. You know what I mean?
Steve, do we feel sorry for Man City if they can't field a bench?
Not really. I mean, they've got enough money, they've got enough players, they've got 2 11s, haven't they? You know what I mean? They could take 11 off and put another 11 on, and you wouldn't notice much difference. So, no, of course you can't feel sorry for Manchester City. I mean, just one other point on what the original question about looking after players. Matty Longstaff's the one that springs to mind at Newcastle. Newcastle did look after him. He got a bad injury, got a cruciate ligament injury, and Newcastle, he was out of contract, and Newcastle rehabilitated him before they let him go. So I think he's still out of contract. I don't think he's got a club yet, but at least Newcastle did have the aftercare, and when his contract finished on June the 1st or July the 1st or whenever it was, they could have just said, right, cheers, you're off, and take care of yourself. But they didn't. They looked after him, they nurtured him, got him back to full fitness, and then they let him out. So look, from my perspective, Manchester City, you can't feel sorry for them. It should be a level playing field for everybody, but they've got more than enough money to solve their own problems.
Yeah, we've had a message in on WhatsApp. You can WhatsApp us in to the studio at any point throughout the morning with your say. 0330 043 2002. Adam from the Shipyard Cat has been in touch. Let's get some $2 to spend on some quality cheese. But what he said is, regarding the free agents, if you've got a passion for the game, surely you would be willing to drop down a league. It proves that sometimes money is all that they want.
Agree with Adam. I recorded the podcast with Adam yesterday, and we were talking about obviously the games and that and upcoming and that. But I totally agree with him what he says there. Sometimes it just money is important. It's a shame, really, especially when you've got people that are in the world that are struggling and stuff like that, and you've got players that are just sort of laughing at it really by getting all the money and stuff like that, and thinking, I don't need to go and play after I've been let go from this club because I've got that much money. I can just sit on it and live happily ever after. And you're thinking, wow, just wow. But it's football favourites. I say, a bit like radio, it's a cutthroat business.
Yeah. We've also had a message in from Dan in Gateshead. He said, I can't believe you boys have not mentioned this from last night. Liverpool played Lask in the Europa League last night, and if you've never heard of them, they're a small club from the north of England who've won 1 league title in 33 years. So there you go on that one. You can
they beat them 3-1, didn't they? But Lask winning 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
They were, weren't they?
Yeah.
And Manchester, we'll have a laugh at Manchester United after the break.
Now that sounds like a good segue. We'll be back after this.
Now then, do you do sales? Do you fancy a great career challenge? Well, the Red, the Cat and the Toon has a full-time vacancy for a special sales exec. Not only will you be responsible for generating the vital revenue needed to see the North East's newest radio business grow, but you'll grow too. Show us you can do the business and you'll soon become Group Sales Director. Our stations are flying. We have the three legends back on air. Then there's the one that most are talking about, the North East Footy Brekky show. And there's more to come. Gumption and creativity count more to us than years. You may only have 2 or 3 years selling experience, but if you get what we're trying to achieve, you will be the right fit. You'll ideally be located in Tyneside or Wearside. This will be a hybrid working role. It's a full-time basic plus commission position. So come on, think you have what it takes? Then give us a shout. Email any of the 3 stations. That's hello@thetoonuk.com, hello@thecatuk.com, or hello@thereduk.com.
On DAB radio, online and smart speakers.
The Toon, the Cat and the Red.
Squeeze and up the junction on the North East Footy Brekky on the Cat, the Toon and the Red this morning, 8:37. Boys, we were going to chat about the predictions for the weekend. Obviously, we've got the big 3 teams and the big 3 games this weekend. But there was something else I think you wanted to mention first.
Just want to have a quick laugh at Man United getting beat off Bayern Munich 4-3. It was humiliating, 3-0. This was on Wednesday night, of course. The latest Harry Kane scored a penalty just to round their misery off. But yeah, Manchester United again. But we didn't manage to touch on that yesterday. And just for those of you following the European football, Rangers of course had a 1-0 win against Real Betis. West Ham beaten Baka Topola by 3-1. Villa didn't fare well in the European Cup yesterday as well. They got beat by 3-2. And yeah, as the texter mentioned, Lask did manage to score first. Florian Flecker got the first goal, but Liverpool's Núñez, Diaz and Mo Salah struck to make it 3-1. And fair play to Lask. I mean, that was great just for them to go ahead, wasn't it? Well done to them. Brighton lost 3-2 to Athens as well.
Yeah.
Just on the Man United thing, I noticed, obviously I'm not a Man United lover at all, Steve, but I've noticed you like to laugh at Man United, but do you know what? I'm going to be bold and I'll make this prediction now. I still think Man United will win more than Newcastle this season.
It's the only team that Newcastle United have never finished above in the Premier League, Manchester United. There's an interesting stat.
That's a good start.
Wow.
They have never finished above them in the Premier League, I say. Not the
tell you what, I'd be like on that to believe that if they didn't have Andre Onana in goal. I tell you though, that guy keeps dropping clangers. The poor bloke is not having a good start to his Manchester United career, and actually, unfortunately, just after the Champions League performance as well, he was pictured spilling his key card as he got into his car at Manchester Airport as well. So he's just dropping everything, he's Onana. And there was put to the fans actually of Man United who would they rather have Onana after his start or bring De Gea back, and it was overwhelmingly 62% would want De Gea back over Onana. So there you have it. They are not on board with their current goalkeeper.
Let's talk about the 3 clubs that matter and the predictions and that, guys. Come on.
Well, off to the Borough. We have got a chance again, Borough fans, to get 3 points. Please, may it happen at some point. We are back at Riverside this weekend. Obviously, we have got Southampton coming down to the Riverside. And Southampton not in the greatest run of form at the moment and shipping a few goals. But unfortunately, Middlesbrough still struggling to find them. So it's in for an interesting clash. Can Middlesbrough, finally find some form? Is Carrick able to stop the rot? And get us scoring and getting us some goals. Middlesbrough are likely to be out without Alex Bangura and Marcus Force, as reported in the headlines, both still recovering from a hamstring injury and a thigh injury, respectively. But they are the only two injuries we can see at the moment for Middlesbrough to pop up. Obviously, they have training today, but at the moment, we're going in with a full bit of health apart from Alex Bangura and Marcus Force. The left-back situation is going to be interesting for Middlesbrough. Will Lucas Engel retain his spot after a horrid display midweek at Sheffield Wednesday? Who's going to start left-back? We saw Vandenberg move into that position on Tuesday when he took Engel off at half-time. Will Vandenberg start back in left-back, or will Michael Carrick use this chance to maybe have a look at different formations? The question again on all of Borough's fans, and we seem to be going in, but will Riley McGree start again? Obviously, he has been one of the most influential midfielders for Middlesbrough. But again, not all the players, all the players at the moment are down on confidence, and the only way forward is to get a team that's consistent in terms of in terms of that lineup. And I hope that Carrick can start finding some consistency in his starting 11. The issue is obviously injuries and trying to make that, but the issue Carrick's got is obviously finding goals. We've got Josh Coburn, who played, I thought, a very good role midweek. I thought he's obviously a young lad, but he's a big lad, and he held the ball up well. You could see some of the corners. He was willing to get up and get his head to it. I'd like to see Joshy Coburn lead the line again, but I'd like to see Latte Lath come on and still be able to run the rings around some of these Southampton defenders as well. I think Latte Lath has still got a lot to offer at the championship level. I know he hasn't been firing and finding back of the net, but he still is getting into those positions, and we need to give him a chance to find that form. So I would love to see Josh Coburn and Latte Lath up front for me, and I'd love to see a bit of a change in the midfield. Obviously, Hayden Hackney playing up a little bit higher than he has. Maybe Johnny Howson comes in to help the defence out. You'd expect Dale Fry, Darragh Lenihan to start in defence as well. Darragh Lenihan scoring his first goal for the club, obviously midweek as well, obviously being one of the talismans of the season. And Seni Dieng, I think, will obviously start in goal for the Borough. Over at Southampton, they're obviously not in a good run of form of late, and we've seen the gaffer having to come out and defend his players in Russell Martin, saying that they're not used to losing, but it's something that they're going to have to accept if they want to get better. They said, Russell Martin said that he started struggling to deal with defeats, and he said these players are just not, really aware, not expecting to be defeated this season, thinking they might have an easy run in the championship. But obviously, Russell Martin, obviously experienced with Swansea City, has come back and said to his players, it's time to keep a level head, lads. I told you this right from the start. The championship wasn't going to be easy. Now we need to work very hard on the detail and the mentality and togetherness of the group before we go to Middlesbrough on Saturday. It's the only choice we have. We're either going to sink or swim, and that is football. So interesting and tantalising fixture. Both teams looking for a win. Both teams looking to change their fortunes. Both teams looking to get their fans back on side. Will Michael Carrick prevail? Will Russell Martin prevail? Two young coaches that are pipped for bright futures in the managerial game. Who will come out on top? We pray, we hope, we believe Middlesbrough will get it right at some point, and we can all start back at home at a packed out Riverside. And make sure, if you are looking for tickets, get on the website and get involved with what's going to be a great day out. I'm going for a Middlesbrough win. 1-0. I think it's going to be a scrappy affair. I think we've got two teams down on confidence. I don't think there's going to be many goals in it, but I think we're going to be able to snag a goal and then be able to hold Southampton out. I'm not looking for a big win. I'm just looking for a solid 1-0 win. So that is what I'm thinking. I think Michael Carrick is going to have to become a bit bullish and try and get his team to start grinding out some results. Whether it's pretty, whether it's not, whatever it may be, I think Carrick needs to start playing a little bit grindy, a little bit dirty, if you will, in trying to grind out some results. And I think he's, we could see a very different man cut in the interview midweek. So 1-0 win for the Borough. And Steve, how are you seeing this game lineup?
Newcastle United obviously take on Sheffield United. It's live on Sky Sports, 4:30 kick-off this coming Sunday. Obviously an extra day's rest after being in the Champions League this week. Team news will obviously come out later at Eddie Howe's press conference, usually around about the 9:30, 10 o'clock mark, means we'll just miss it. But we do know that Joe Linton and Joe Willock are both unavailable. Emil Kraft is back in training, but he is nowhere near making a playing return. Martin Dubravka was conspicuous by his absence against Milan, wasn't on the bench, so the availability of him is also to be confirmed. Sheffield United, the one bit of news that we do know is that Ollie McBurney is going to be missing due to suspension. We do know that Baldock is probably going to have a fitness test as well. This game really is a game that Newcastle should be looking at picking up maximum points. Paul Heckingbottom, the manager, is winless since his return to the Premier League. He has been beaten at home by Crystal Palace and Manchester City, and beaten away from home by Nottingham Forest and Tottenham Hotspur. They have got 1 point to their name, and that was a 2-2 draw with Everton at Bramall Lane. The referee, well, it's a face that we are familiar with because he took charge of the 3-1 defeat at Brighton. It is Stuart Atwell, and on VAR it is Darren England. Squad rotation is going to be the name of the game, I think, at this particular match. I think we will see a return to the fray for Callum Wilson. I think that he will be back up front, and I think he'll rest Alexander Isak. Other decisions to make. The back four, I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about potentially changing the back four. Drop Dan Burn and give Hall a chance, seems to be a lot of people, or give Trippier a rest and bring Livramento in. I don't think Eddie Howe will be listening to anybody on social media. I think he'll keep Nick Pope in goal, and I think the back four will be as it is. I think it'll be Dan Burn at left back, Kieran Trippier at right back, and Sven Botman and Fabian Schär at the back. The big decisions, of course, are to be made in midfield. We know Joe Linton is going to be unavailable, so he's got that decision to make. Does he bring Tonali back out of the team and bring Elliot Anderson back in with a big cup game coming up, or does he go with the Tonali Bruno combo in the middle? It remains to be seen. One thing's for sure, Anthony Gordon has been a star player over the last few games, certainly impressing the Newcastle United faithful. I would imagine Gordon will definitely start. Will Barnes get a run out? Will Almiron get a run out? It's question marks over the midfield, but I do think Wilson will get the nod. Wilson's done nothing wrong in the games that he's played. He is a bit of a talisman. He's on a great run. He's second, I think, only to Haaland in the goal scoring stakes in 2023 for goals scored in the games played. I would bring him in. But it's an interesting game. It's one of those games. Had we lost against Brentford and lost against AC Milan, we would have really been looking at this as a game which could dictate the future matches, the season that Newcastle had ahead. But with 3 points in the bag against Brentford, a good point away at AC Milan in our opening Champions League game, I'm seeing this as a game for Newcastle United to win. I'm going for a 2-0 win to Newcastle, a confident 2-0 win, and a chance to get another 3 points on the board and get us a little bit further up that Premier League.
Macca, your predictions for the Sunderland game?
Sunderland host Cardiff on Sunday with a 3 p.m. kickoff at the Stadium of Light. Limited tickets, safc.com if you want to find out more info. Of course, the soup kitchen collecting before the game as well. And it'll be, again, squad rotation. Will there be changes? Will Ekwa make it? Obviously, all questions that will get answered over the weekend and press conference later today with Tony Mowbray. It's an interesting one, this one. Sunderland, on current form, you would say that Sunderland should win, but it doesn't really work like that. But I'm hoping that we'll get a good performance for the home crowd, and obviously get to see some of the new players, because it's they're playing away from home, but it's a totally different environment playing at home with the crowd behind you and stuff like that. And so I've got me predictions for the other two games in my head, and I've got the Sunderland one, and I think Sunderland will win 2-0. I think we'll keep a clean sheet. I think we'll keep the back door shut, and and I can't wait to tell the lads my predictions for the Newcastle and Middlesbrough games.
Well, let's stick with Sunderland then, and we'll go around. I think Sunderland, obviously coming off the back of three wins, I think they're going to be flying. I'm going for a 3-0 Sunderland. I think they'll turn Cardiff over. Steve, Sunderland.
It's a tough game, Cardiff. The one thing about going on decent runs like Sunderland have is there's always that fear of complacency.
Yeah.
Cardiff, I think have got a habit of spoiling people's parties. I think it's going to be a bit tighter than 3-0. I'm going to go 2-1 Sunderland.
Okay, and right.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be a tough match. I think Cardiff are actually a bit of a surprise packet in the Championship this season. I think they've been well organised and they've made some good signings. I still think Sunderland will get it done, especially being at home, but I think it'll just be a 1-0 to Sunderland there.
I like that. 3 wins for Sunderland. That's good.
Yeah, we've been kind to you this morning, Macca. All right. Rye thinks the Borough will take on Southampton and will beat them 1-0. I think it's going to be a tight game. I'm going to go for 1-1 on that one. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Borough. I don't think they've got enough at the moment. I would love to see them win the game. I really would. But I think it's going to be a really tight one. Macca, Borough.
Yes, Borough. Well, long trip up for the Saints fans. I think they're going to go back to Hampshire happy. I think Southampton will beat Borough. I think they'll beat Borough. I think they'll beat Borough 2-1.
Okay. And Steve?
Sorry, Rye, I can't see Middlesbrough getting anything from this game. I think this is going to be a 2-0 win for Southampton.
There you go.
Lads, no, it's fair enough the way we're travelling.
Yeah. And back to Newcastle, Steve. Steve thinks it's going to be 2-0 versus Sheffield United. Rye, what are your thoughts?
I reckon they're going to bang in more against Sheffield United. I don't like what I've seen from Sheffield United this season. I think they've got Cameron Archer and obviously Hammer in their midfield, but their defence has gone anything but backwards. Obviously with Sanderberg going off to Burnley as well. I think that Newcastle are going to have a riot here, and they're going to be right onto it. After what I saw with them digging out against Brentford on the weekend before the Champions League, I think Newcastle are up for a good win here. I'm going for a 3-0 win to Newcastle, and I think Callum Wilson's going to get a hat trick there as well.
Very good.
Sheffield United, a team that sing about a greasy chipotty and a night out in Sheffield. I think that Sheffield United will get their first win in the Premier League this weekend.
You can't be serious.
I think that Sheffield, in fact, I'm putting money on it as well. I think that Sheffield United will beat Newcastle 2-1.
Well, it's all about opinions.
It is. It is. I think you were going to turn them over. I think this is where we'll see Newcastle really come alive this weekend. I'm going for 4-0 Newcastle. Yeah, I think you're going to batter them. I think it's coming. I think
Agreed.
It just needs those little tweaks, particularly I think in midfield. And I think it's going to come, and I think you're going to wallop them.
You don't think there'll be any
agree.
fatigue after the European game? That's only
No, they've got the squad depth.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you've watched Sheffield United, and no disrespect to you guys, it's a big jump up and stuff like that, but if you've watched how Sheffield United are defending at the moment under Paul Heckingbottom with the loss of Sanderberg as well, obviously going off to Burnley as well, I don't think we can understand, obviously from outside looking in, but you speak to a few Sheffield United fans and that, but the players they have lost are more significant than the ones they've brought in terms of the defensive cover that they've had. And you can see how frustrated Paul Heckingbottom was. You can see how frustrated Ollie McBurney was, obviously having goes at refs and stuff like that. And Newcastle are just that sleeping giant. They have got they've got some world-class beaters in there. They're obviously well back. They're going to be sitting high off a good Champions League away trip as well. Everyone's going to be up and about, and Sheffield are just there for the taking. And I think they're not gonna miss.
And that is it, guys. That is it from us, from the North East Footy Breakfast this morning. Thank you very much. You got plans for the weekend, boys? Obviously, apart from the football. Or is it just all about the football?
Watching the football, and I've got a baby on the way, so I've got a nursery to build. So that's my plans.
Very good.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with Edinburgh tomorrow for the Hibs game, and then off to the Sunderland match on Sunday. So, yeah, that's my plan. 17th game this season will be on Sunday for me.
And congratulations for completing our first month on the North East Footy Brekky.
There you go.
Yeah, well
number
done.
1. Look at us go.
Absolutely.
Happy anniversary, lads.
Have a cool one tonight just to celebrate, will you?
Just do that.
Don't forget, Borough fans.
He can think more than football. He cares about us. You've heard it here. Someone clip it. He cares about us.
For Borough fans, don't forget, tomorrow Rye will be back on the Red for the watch along for the Borough game as well, which is a really good listen and watch on YouTube as well. But have yourselves a wonderful weekend, guys. Another fab week, and we look forward to more North East Footy Breakfast next week.
Thank you to Darren for holding the fort this week with Dave being away. Well done.
I've really enjoyed it, guys.
On board, mate.
Yeah, I'll be back Monday as well.
Sunderland fans, get to listen to the Shipyard Cat podcast. New episode out where it's just come out this morning or last night. So yeah, get your
NUFC man.
I was just about to say as well, Steve.
At 5 o'clock.
Have a great weekend, guys. It's been a pleasure. Take it easy.
See you, boys.
All the best.
Catches.